Listeners, would you like to know when to say yes or no, how to tell which piece of feedback is right for you or your book, or how to proceed with greater ease? If you're working on a book, let's say a memoir, would you like to spend more time having your characters tell you what to write and less time trying to figure it out? I'm going to raise my hand right there. And guess what? I am happy to report that the solution is easier than you might think. And that is what we're going to talk about today as we take a deep dive into one of my favorite topics, building your creative intuition. Be sure to stick around for the final part where I share how to use the tool you already have in your tool belt to connect with your intuition and strengthen it. Let's dive in. Welcome to Writing Resilience, the podcast for writers who want to write and live the story that sets them free. I'm your host, Lisa Cooper Ellison, a writer, transformational and trauma-informed coach, story alchemist, and fellow traveler on the winding road of healing and creativity. Each week, I'll share tools, practices, and conversations that will help you let go of what no longer serves you as you create stories that change lives, especially your own. Together, we'll explore how to trust your creative voice, support your mental health and resilience, work with your nervous system and unique design, and stay connected to your deepest calling as a writer, even when life gets messy. It's time, my friends, to write and live the story that sets you free. I'm honored to walk that journey alongside you, one story and one episode at a time. Well, hello, everyone. So often on the podcast, I speak to you as a writer and writing coach, and I am definitely channeling all of that with you today. But this week, I am pulling in some of the other trainings that I have to help you tap into this amazing, easy to access wisdom that you already have available to you. And here is the best part. This wisdom is faster than ChatGPT. It will not hallucinate, and it will always be on your side. So, what is that? That is your intuition. And this is a topic that can be really fraught for people because many people think that it's magical or that people with special gifts have it. They might say, oh, that person is touched, or that person has second sight, or that person is psychic. And while it is true that some people are more naturally gifted with their intuition or they have a greater connection with their intuition, this isn't magical. It is something that every single person has. All you have to do is learn to recognize it and then to strengthen your connection to it. So let's begin by talking about what your intuition actually is. So, intuition is sometimes called your sixth sense, and that's because that is exactly what it is. So, we often talk about the five senses: sight, smell, hearing, touch, and taste, right? Those are the five senses. And what your senses do is they pull in information from the environment so that you can respond to it. Well, your intuition is this unconscious sense that you have that pulls in information from very far away sometimes, and even in your regular environment, very, very quickly. And then it combines that information with the experiences you have, the wisdom you have, and it pulls it all together very quickly and then gives you a quick answer. And so the question becomes, well, how do you know that you're getting an intuitive answer? And that is to pay attention to your clairs. So, your clairs are just these different ways that you have to connect with that wisdom. And there's one that you probably have heard, and that is clairvoyance. And so, we often think about clairvoyance as a skill that psychics have, right? They can see into the future. And sometimes that is how clairvoyance works, but it can be a simpler and it can work in an easier way. And if you're a writer, you've experienced clairvoyance at various points in your life when you have been in a state of flow. So think about a time when you were working on a creative project and you could just see what was going to happen, like it was a movie in your head. Okay, that is clairvoyance. And sometimes when we're working through a problem, we will suddenly have this aha. and it will show up as an image in our minds. We will, see an iceberg and we'll go, oh, yeah, that means that most of the answer is underneath, or it could be something else, but we have a visual in our minds that helps us wrestle with something and come up with an answer. There are actually 8 different forms of clairs. We're not going to talk about all of them today. I'm just going to talk about the ones that are most common, because those are the ones I want you to begin to connect with and start to strengthen. So we have clairvoyance, and the next one is clairaudience. So clairaudience is when you hear the information. And we often hear that as the still small voice inside us. This is that calm, very peaceful voice that is part of our inner monologue, right? So we're all always talking to ourselves. That's just part of what we do as human beings and how we make decisions and make meaning of the experiences we have around us. So what happens is that that still small voice will speak to you and it will tell you something about what's happening or which direction that you should go. And what I want you to pay attention to when it comes to this voice, and this is the difference between that still small voice that is part of your clairaudience versus the voice of the anxious mind, is that when you have the anxious mind, number one, you're going to feel a sense of anxiety, and it's not going to have a sense of certainty. Right. There's going to be something a little frenetic and maybe, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe you should do that. And you'll be reasoning and you will actually feel that experience in your brain. You will feel like you are in your head. When you are experiencing clairaudience, you will feel very calm and you may be hearing something which is in your ears, or it may experience this in your brain, but you won't feel like you're in your head in the exact same way. So those are two of the, I think, most common clairs. And I think in the writing life, the way that will show up is when it feels like your characters are speaking to you and they're telling you which how to work with your story. That's often through clairaudience. But what we want to also talk about are two of the other common ones, and one of them is claircognizance, which is clear knowing. This occurs when you just know something, right? You're at a crossroads in your life and you just know the way to go. Someone is telling you something, they're telling you a story or they're giving you some information, and you just know that it's true or you know that they're lying, right? That is how it works. And it's just this very clear inner knowing. And again, it has this sense of peace that comes along with it. And when you experience it, you just know what's right and you can actually just trust that and move forward. You don't necessarily have to do a whole bunch of research and get a pro con list or question that. Right? And so that's part of the journey, is like trusting that that is true. The last one I'm going to talk about is clairsentience. And clairsentience is when you experience a feeling. And this is probably something that you've experienced if you've ever just come across some information and you had some tingling in your body, or you had goosebumps, or you had that, what we will call the gut feeling, right? You had some sort of tug inside your gut. That's one way that that can show up. Another way is that you can have an actual emotion, right? You can have those kinds of feelings. And I'm going to share a story about how that works for me. So I am an extreme empath. And what that means is that it's very easy for me to experience other people's feelings. And I can sometimes feel them even if they don't tell me what they're feeling. If they're having a strong feeling, I will feel that too. And when I was younger, that was a skill that helped me out a lot. But what I've learned is that when I do that now, it distracts me from my own feelings. And it's generally not useful unless I'm doing, say, an Akashic Records reading and I'm connecting with those feelings to, share them with a client, or I'm working with a client in some way. In general life, that's often not useful for me right now. And I say thank you every day that that's true, because that means that I'm in a safe experience where I don't have to use that skill. But here's a time when it just flooded through me. So a few years back, I went to Washington, D.C., and I was on the mall and I visited the Vietnam Memorial. Now, both of my parents lost friends in the Vietnam War because they were in high school and when this was going on, and their friends got drafted. Well, I don't have any personal experiences with loss due to the Vietnam War. I know about them from my parents, but I never met the people that they lost. Right. So this isn't a personal experience, but I wanted to look at the wall and see what was there. Well, as soon as I walked into the exhibit, I was flooded with this profound sense of grief. And I felt like I could feel the grief of all the people who had come here and found their loved one's name on the wall. And I was just overwhelmed by it. And as I walked through it, I just felt these tears coming down my face. And I just wanted to bowl over and just start crying. And I knew what it was. So I just kept taking deep breaths and walked through the exhibit. And when it was done and I was on the other side, I felt totally free of it. Right. So that was an experience of clairsentience for me. And so what you want to do is just be curious about how are these things showing up in your life? And if they're not, or it doesn't feel like they are, don't fret. These are skills that you can develop, right? It's this intuition isn't something that is for special people. It's for all of us. And the reason why I want to talk about that is that you can use this intuition as part of your creative practice, right? That's why I call it creative intuition, is that it becomes a dialogue and you move with it in a creative way, but also it can help you with your creative projects. That's why I call it that. But what I want to get back to now is, how do we develop these skills? So the first step is to be in your body. That is number one. And that is because so many of us try to make all of our decisions with this up here, right? With our brain, and we make them from the neck up. But the reality is that your wisdom lies in your body. Nobody talks about, oh, I had a head feeling the other day and I knew exactly where to go. No, they do the pro con list. They start all the thinky stuff, right? No, you talk about having a gut feeling. That's where that wisdom comes from. And in order to have that wisdom, you have to be in your body and paying attention to what's around you. So, how do you spend more time in your body? Number one, put your phone down. Spend time during the day without your phone. Here's some ways to do that. Put your phone in a completely different room. You can also put it on airplane mode. You can have it on airplane mode in the room that you're in, but it's going to be more powerful if you put it on airplane mode for a period of time and you put it somewhere else. That alone is going to help you feel more present. And that is because we have so many dings, pings, pops, and whatevers on our phones that just pull us into our heads and actually out of our bodies as we're thinking about all that information and all that stuff out there. So take a break from your phone. The next thing you can do is walk in nature. Just being in nature in this very creative, dynamic space is going to make you feel more present with your life. And if you can walk on the ground, preferably barefoot, for a few minutes in the grass, this can ground you. And it's another way of being in your body. A third thing you can do is just take some deep breaths. And let's go ahead and do that now so we can notice the difference. So if you are driving or you are operating heavy machinery, please do not close your eyes, but you can participate. Let's just start out by just notice how you are feeling right now. So are you in your body or do you feel like you're in your head? Once you've had a chance to just check in, and there's no judgment if you're in your head. So many of us are there all the time, myself included. What I want you to do is just, again, if you're not driving or using heavy machinery, you can close your eyes or you can just look ahead and let's take a few deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. So inhaling and exhaling, inhaling and exhaling. And one more time, inhaling and exhaling. Just notice how you feel. What was that like for you? And so I want you to just pay attention. Are you more in your body? Because that's what we want, right? We want that experience, and the breath is a very easy way for us to get there. And once you have done this breath, you can do the bonus points activity, which is to spend a few times doing nothing. That means no scrolling on your phone, no reading a book, no spinning your wheels on different things you could be working on, just doing nothing. And if this feels really uncomfortable, just do it for 1 minute and then work up to 5. So it doesn't need to be something that you spend a lot of time on, but just do it a little and notice what happens. Because that will lead to the next thing that you need to do, and that is to be open, right? So first you have to be in your body, and then you have to be open to the information coming in. And you can do that in a few different ways. You can just say out loud, okay, I'm open to the answer. Go take a shower. That's a great place for people to get intuitive hits. Say, you know what? I'm going to take an intuitive shower. Get in the shower and see what happens. You can also get out your journal and just ask a question. And then instead of trying to work out the answer, just write automatically and see what comes out, because what comes out probably is coming from your intuition. You can also, if you have a dream journal, you can write down a question, or you can say to yourself right before you go to bed, oh gosh, I'm having this problem and I just don't know where to go. Brain, intuition, can you help me work this out while I'm sleeping? Just ask and then see what happens by morning. You may find that the answer comes to you, and it comes to you very easily. And so those are some things you can do. You can also check in with your body, right? And just notice, either when someone asks you a question, do you have a physical response, a response that makes you go, yay, or a response that goes, ooh, I want to get away from that. Pay attention to that. You can also imagine some different scenarios and say, okay, if I say yes to this, how does it feel in my body? And you can hold your arm, or you can do something like this and just notice, like, what do your muscles say? Okay. Because sometimes your intuition will speak through your muscles. And these are just different things that you can be curious about as you are opening yourself up to your intuition. And that will lead to number 3. And this is where I'm going to talk about that tool that I mentioned at the beginning. And that tool is your journal, right? This is going to be your most powerful tool that you can use to strengthen your connection to your intuition, which is going to boost your creative intuition as you are working on your projects. So, this comes from my training as an Akashic Records reader and healer. When I was getting my training, one of the first things we were told to do was to get a journal and to write in it every day. And so I have an uncensored journal practice, and this is pretty similar to morning pages, where I will just write things down. And as I'm writing them down, if an intuitive hit comes to me, like, oh, I'm thinking about so and so, this person that I haven't talked to in a while, their image of their face comes into my head, or I hear their voice, I will write that down. If anything else is coming to me, I will write these things down. And the reason why you do that is because sometimes when we get an intuitive hit, it's before we need the answer. And when you're writing these things down, you are collecting data. And the more data you collect around your intuition, the more you will trust your intuition. So, for instance, if you start thinking about someone and then suddenly that person calls you, well, it's not just this idea you had in your brain where you can go, well, what did that happen? Did that not happen? No, you have proof that it did happen. And I'm going to share a little story. It's pretty personal about how this showed up for me in a very powerful way. So last year, something happened in my marriage that made me very angry. Things happen when you're in partnership. It's not all hunky dory every single day. This made me really mad. And I happened to be traveling when this happened. So, situation happened, and it doesn't matter what the situation was, but just know, situation that made me angry happened. And then I had to immediately go travel. Well, while I'm traveling, I'm ruminating about this. It felt like something that needed to be talked about in person, not on the phone, just was on my mind, right? And it's eating at me. And I didn't know what to do. So I said to my intuition, like, intuition, if there's something that I need to know about this situation to lead to a resolution, let me know. And then I went to sleep. While I was in bed asleep, I had this dream. where I heard something that felt very true. It was a very vivid experience. And I immediately wrote it down. And this is what was really interesting. It felt very true, and it felt like something I did not want to hear. So not only did I write it down, but then I wrote, and this sucks, and I hate it, and this isn't true, and I don't even care, and all of that stuff. So I let myself have my angry feelings. Okay, trip gets done. I get home, still feeling really angry, knew I needed to confront on this issue. And so I did in a pretty angry way. And which was okay, right? Sometimes we need to express our anger. It wasn't a bad thing, but it was uncomfortable, that's for sure. So I shared that. And then my husband said, well, are you ready to listen to my perspective, what my side? Well, the first thing I said is, no, I am not. Because I wasn't. I still had a lot of anger inside me. But even in that moment, that still small voice inside me said, you need to listen. And because I have been working with my intuition long enough, even though that angry part of me wanted to just flip him a bunch of birds, I was like, oh, fuck, I need to listen. So I said, fine, tell me what your side is. Tell me what you want me to hear. And I didn't want to listen at all, right? I was just going to stand there and humor him for a second and still stew. Don't you know what he said was totally aligned with what was in my dream? And I was like, oh my God, that is it. And so, yeah, that was this moment where I had this huge trust of my intuition. And the thing is that if I had not written it down and I didn't have it on paper with a date, I probably would have questioned it. I would have questioned myself and be like, well, maybe that happened, maybe it didn't. But no, the more you write things down, the stronger your connection to your intuition is going to be. And the more you connect with it, the stronger it becomes, the more you can use it for any part of your life, including your writing life. Another thing that you can do that can be really helpful is to pay attention to signs. Because sometimes we think about, okay, it can happen in dreams, I can have this feeling, but pay attention to the signs out in the world. So pay attention to billboards, bumper stickers, songs that come on the radio. All of that can be intuition that is helping you. And I'm going to share one more story about how that worked for me before I give you an exercise. So, February 8th was the anniversary of my brother's death. My brother died by suicide in 1997 when he was 20 years old, and I was 22. And so, yeah, I've gone through 29 anniversaries. And if you have ever lost someone that is very close to you, then you know those anniversaries can show up a lot of different ways, right? Sometimes they're really hard, sometimes they're easy. The day was coming up and I wasn't having a lot of feelings about it. And I felt really okay. And I was kept checking in with myself just to see, how are you doing with this? That morning, same thing. Checked in with myself. How am I doing? I was doing fine. Well, I started working on something later that day, and all of a sudden, bam, it hit me. This tremendous grief that I had around this experience. And you know, when someone you love has been gone for 29 years, and that amount of time is longer than they were alive, it can feel like their life was a dream. And that's how it was feeling to me. I was like, was he even alive? Did our relationship actually happen? Because so many of those memories that I have with him have this very dreamlike quality at this point because they were so long ago. And so I was having this deep sense of disconnection, heartache, disbelief in our experience in our life together. And I started crying. And, you know, what I do every year on the anniversary, and I usually do it when I start crying, is I listen to 3 songs. So I started listening to Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is a song that we loved when we were kids. And then I listened to Do You Realize by the Flaming Lips. And then I listened to Hallelujah. And so I listened to those songs, and Spotify kept playing. And then all of a sudden, the song Just Breathe by Pearl Jam started to play. And as soon as it started playing, it felt like I was sitting with my brother and that he was singing that song to me. And that was that intuitive hit, that connection, and a reminder that our connection was real. Our experience together was real. Our life was real. And even though he is no longer here, he still lives inside me. Right. And so that helped me rewrite the story of that day. And it also helped me be with my feelings and experience some comfort. Right. So intuition can offer so many benefits to you. And that just happens to be one of them. So, because I want you to experience the benefits of intuition, I want you to pause for a second and say, what is my connection to my intuition? Right. Just be with that now and see how that feels. And if you are still like, I don't know, maybe I have intuition, maybe I don't, that's okay, right? Either way, I want you to try this experiment knowing that it's either going to work or it's not. And if it doesn't, no big deal. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about a low stakes experience in your life. So that could be something like going to get ice cream, right? I want you to just think about whatever that is, write about it in your journal. I'm going to get ice cream. What flavor should I get? And then automatically write down an answer. Don't think about it. Just let your pen hit the page and write something. You may find that all of your life, you have always gotten chocolate ice cream because that's your favorite flavor. If you write down butter pecan, this is the next part. I want you to go get it, right? Whatever that low stakes thing is, especially if it feels weird or it seems strange, don't question it, just do it. And then as you get practice doing that and seeing what the results are, and especially if you see that the results are really happy results, keep going and up the ante just a little bit more and a little bit more. And then you may get to a point where, just like I was really mad and I didn't know what to do. So what did I do? I connected with my intuition and I became open to an answer. And when one came up, I acted upon it. Okay. So that is what can happen. It can be so powerful. And when you can do that in your own life, when you start to get feedback on your writing, and you get some feedback and you're like, wow, should I trust this or not? And it's not so much that someone has given you bad feedback, but it may not align with your vision. You're going to immediately know because you can tap into your intuition. The other thing I want you to do is follow your bliss. Do what you want, at least at some point in your week, right? If you have this great joy to go thrift store shopping or go bake some cookies or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Go do it and then pay attention to the outcome, because those little bits of desire, those desires for bliss are actually your intuition talking to you. And again, if you can continue to do that, it's going to help you trust your intuition even more. So, I've given you some different ways that you can work with your intuition. But if you're still like, Lisa, I have no idea if I have intuition, or if you're like, maybe I do, but I need to know more about this, this is one of the easiest ways to learn more about your intuition. Look at your past experiences. I want you to think through your life and think about one or two times where you had a gut feeling and you either went for it or you didn't. And I want you to think about what the outcome was. Because I can definitely say in my life, and this is true for the big stuff as well as the little stuff, that I get those gut feelings. And when I pay attention to them and I honor them, things usually work out. And when I don't, I usually learn a hard lesson. So pay attention to what that is for you. And then I want you to journal about it, because the more you journal about it, the more you're going to understand how your intuition has been there for you the whole time and how it's been trying to speak to you and help you so that you can trust it and then get even more of the payoff that is available to you. So, my deepest hope for you is that you can begin to connect with those inner messages and follow them, because when you do that, your life is going to be so much easier and so much more aligned. Does that mean you're never going to have problems? No, unfortunately not, because as long as we're here on earth, we're going to experience hardships because that's what happens on earth. And that is how we grow, right? And so that is not a bad thing. But even when you go through the hardships, if you know you can rely on your intuition, you're going to go through them with greater grace, and it's going to feel easier than it would be if you didn't have that resource available to you. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to take this further, I want you to go ahead and press pause and grab your journal. Don't worry, I'll wait. And now that you're back, I want you to answer this question. If my intuition could speak to me in a sentence right now, what would it say? Leave your answer on YouTube because I would love to hear and see what your intuition is telling you. And speaking of your thoughts on the podcast and your feedback, I want to give a huge shout out and offer some thanks to Nancy Keeler for sharing your thoughts on the podcast on Instagram and for adding so many of my recent episodes to your listen list. I know you said that you're a little behind and that there are so many episodes you could listen to, but just knowing that you've added them to your library made my day. And listeners, if you haven't connected with the show, please make my day by reaching out, especially on YouTube, because I would love to hear from you. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I couldn't do this podcast without your support. If you love this episode, here are 3 simple ways that you can keep this show thriving. 1, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. 2, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show. 3, join my engaged dynamic community by signing up for the Writing Your Resilience newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Ditch Your Inner Critic, 5 tools to transform self-doubt into self-support. Until next time, remember that your story matters. As you write and connect with the truest, most authentic version, you become not just the writer, but the person you're meant to be. And that, my friends, is the real freedom writing can offer.